Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America, brought to you by Accuracy in Academia. I'm your host, Don Irvine, joined as always by my co-host, Brian McNichol.
Hello, deplorables, drags, despicables, chumps, Neanderthals, semi-fascists, maggots, and of course those dog-faced pony soldiers.
All right, we'll have plenty to cover today and everything like that. We were off for a show we've done in a couple of weeks, so we've had some news pile up. We'll go through whatever we can get through, and but lots of interesting stuff. Start off though, with the standard kind of weather situation here. We've got quite a heat wave. I was just on a road trip with my wife that she highly encouraged me to go on. It wasn't something I was planning as of say Friday, and we left Monday. I'm not even sure I was ready on Saturday or Sunday for this, and everything like that. But we drove from here to Pennsylvania to New York, and then over to Ohio, and then back to visit some what we call church historical sites. But it was about 1,100 miles all told from start to finish.
Wow.
That we did in 2 days. But one of the things that struck me was just that it was warm. It was warm in Pennsylvania, but and where we were going in New York was kind of upstate New York. It's Palmyra, Rochester area, and I had checked the kind of the map and everything. I saw something on TV. I guess I saw a TV weather report, and they were like, oh, today it'll be 103 degrees in Syracuse. Now, Syracuse isn't that far away from where we were, but I'm like, 103, I'm glad we're getting out of here.
Wow.
Even if it's close to that, it's like, I want to be out of there. And yet we wind up driving from, in essence, from Rochester area to a town called Kirtland, Ohio. And I don't know what the temperature was, but the heat and humidity reminded me of here. And I know here, well, at home, you guys have had some pretty good heat and humidity, but it was like, there's some outside walking, and we're like, I got to a point where I said, I'm not doing, even when the cloud cover hit yesterday afternoon, I'm looking at my watch and I'm thinking like, I want to get back home, and we got to do a little more walking outdoors, and this is going to take maybe not. I'm like, I'm done. I had to kind of convince my wife that this was it, which was to me was funny because when I told her we were going to go to this particular point of this place, she was surprised that I wanted to go there. But then I had told her, I said, we'll watch this little historical film and then we'll go. And she kind of wanted like, well, I want to go with the tour. I'm like, are you kidding me? Anyway, our meals, we talk about, this is that whirlwind trip, as you can imagine. I mean, we basically spend a night in a hotel. We eat Kentucky Fried Chicken, which was right next door for dinner. And then, our only other meal of the day while we were driving and getting around was at my wife suggested we were at a Costco in Mayfield Heights, Ohio. And so she's like, I'll drop you off over here, and you run in and you go get the hot dogs and the sodas. And I get in there and I'm like, I got to carry 2 sodas and 2 hot dogs and put the top, put all the stuff on there. I'm like, this is going to be kind of fun. And then she calls me, she goes, are you going to be okay carrying that stuff? I'm like, yeah, we should have thought about that beforehand, maybe. And then I'm walking outside and I'm like, she told me where she was, but I couldn't hear her well. I remember her saying handicap, and I go one way and she's at the other one. And anyway, everything worked out just fine. And we ate the hot dogs in the car so we could drive up. We could start the drive, the big part of the drive back. But I just kept thinking, it's like, man, yesterday we were just absolutely melting for just short spurts of time in the sun. And I can handle some of that, but my wife has a much harder time with that. So it's like, so I know when I get to a lot of heat and humidity, I don't necessarily have to have a hard time convincing her to be inside, get in the car, do something, there where you're out of the heat and humidity. But it's pretty brutal. And I'm looking at the temperature, weather forecast for the next week or so, and I'm like, Oh, okay. I'm not sure when I'm going to cut the grass right now.
Yeah, it's pretty rough. We have to have outdoor practice tonight because
Ooh.
all the gyms in the county have been closed Monday and Tuesday for the election, and then today for Juneteenth. So there's no gyms available. So we'll be out on the blacktop starting at 7. Fortunately, the place we're doing it has lights, so we're going to have we'll be able to go pretty late and keep it out of the heat of the day.
Well, hopefully the pavement will have cooled a little bit because, I mean, if it's asphalt or anything like that stuff heats up a lot during the day. So, well, good luck to you on that. And I don't know. I mean, I guess it's just going to be it could look like a good hot summer in DC.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I don't want it being warm. I'm selfish that I'm looking for those little pockets where I'm like, if I can get a weather in about 75 to 80, I've got a little window of time. I can cut the grass and not die, basically. When it gets too hot, it's just hard. Mm-hmm. For which then my wife will say, you should be paying somebody to do that, which then I'll be saying like, probably so. But I get some satisfaction out of cutting the grass, which is probably crazy at my age.
Yeah. People like to do it. There's a lot of people like that.
Things you don't have to worry about.
That's right.
all those decisions that you made saying, I'm done with that.
That's right.
All right. Well, today is, like you said, you just mentioned it's Juneteenth. It's kind of a new holiday, right? I mean, federal holiday wise, I mean, it has been celebrated or honored or whatever you want to call it for a long time I know in Texas. I know, right. Until I had really started visiting Texas for their state Republican conventions, I really was unaware of Juneteenth, had never paid any attention to it. But a lot of times the state Republican convention would come very close to Juneteenth. And I always thought it was kind of an interesting day or an event. And now it's a national holiday. Now, I guess they call a Black Independence Day from slavery. It's Texas focused though, right? I mean,
right. It's when the last people in Texas found out that they were free. Basically, it's like the end of the task of informing everybody in America that slavery was over.
Right.
And I believe it was Galveston, which is down on the Gulf.
Right.
So it had to make its way all the way through and down to the Gulf.
Right. So it's interesting to me too, because I mean, once again, it's just a reminder of how different things are in this day and age. I mean, young people will say, it's like we pick up the phone or whatever and we text somebody, or the government tweets something or whatever, and all this information flows 24/7 now.
Right.
And it's instantaneous.
That's you're on that, like we were talking about Galveston. Okay.
Right.
So the biggest, anybody knows anything about the history of Galveston, it was wiped out in a hurricane in 1906. Right. It came back with they invented the commission form of city government after that to put experts on the top of these, have the experts win the elections, and the guy who knows the most about water or do the water, and the guy who knows the most about cops do the cops and whatnot. Right. Which has now been declared unconstitutional. You can't do it like that anymore. It dilutes minority voting rights. But there was no knowledge that this storm was coming. Right now, we know well in advance, and we're tracking it. Practically from the time the butterflies in Africa, clap their wings together and get the process started, all the way till it's over here, and we've got the pretty pinpoint where it's going and so forth. And that time those people they're on the beach and they have no idea that out in the Gulf a few hundred miles away is utter destruction for their city. No way to prepare, no way to get out. Obviously in 1906 the ways out were severely limited compared to what they are today. So not a lot of people realize this, but the idea of showing the radar on TV, pointing a camera at the radar and showing people where the storms were, that was devised by Dan Rather when he worked for a local KHOU in Houston. And he's like, why don't we just show the radar on the screen, let people see what's happening? And now, of course, the radars are designed to be put on the screen. So it's that much of a revolution in just 100 years.
Oh, that's an interesting little tidbit. But and then we talk with the Juneteenth and this whole deal about slavery. I mean, this is Abraham Lincoln Emancipation Proclamation, which I guess was supposed to take effect in January 1863, but it was about 900 days or thereabouts before it got to the final point, right?
Yeah.
So this is how slowly information, how long it takes in that kind of an era to get information out. Because how do you do that? How do you go from one part of the country to another quickly? There really isn't a fast way compared to today. As I said, today we're so spoiled by the instantaneous method of getting things. I want my information. I want my information now.
Yeah, the Battle of New Orleans was 3 weeks after the war ended.
Yeah.
They just didn't know. They're out there battling their butts off. It's no more war. And in Louisiana, one more Louisiana thing. In the Civil War, the North won, but the campaign, what they call the Red River Campaign, to take Louisiana and keep Texas out of the war, which was a critically important thing for them, was while the Texans get in, it could have been a different deal and so forth, was an utter failure. The South beat them soundly in almost every battle. And when the war ended, the South had to go find the North hiding deep in the woods in order to surrender. It's like, no, you don't understand what we're here. You're not going to believe what we showed up for. You don't need a gun. Yeah, that's right. Dan Rather is in his book. That's how I got it. He may be lying in his book.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Take that, everybody out there. Take that with a grain of salt.
The book is The Camera Never Sleeps, and it's an old book, and there's a lot of journalism history in there. It talks about the Zapruder film and stuff. It's an interesting book.
Yeah. No, I mean, now when you just bring up that whole thing about the Battle of North, it does, the thought comes to my mind too on World War II. How many stories did we hear, where you have those Japanese soldiers that were hiding, right?
Yeah.
And they didn't know the war had ended.
Yeah. But, 30 years and so forth. They come out. I mean, it's okay.
That is, when I heard those stories, I thought, this just seems unfathomable. I mean, the communications in at that time were obviously much better than they were 100 years before or thereabouts, but they're not anywhere near what they are today. But if you're in a remote area like this where these people were, how do you do that? I mean, you have it's kind of like that. You have to go through jungles. You have to go seek them out and try to figure that out, or you just stumble across them, right? Yeah. And say, "Oh no, hey, look! It's over. You can go home now."
That's right. That's right.
I don't know if you have any.
The other thing is, you're that soldier, right? You've been in those woods for 20 years, and someone tells you that. Like, do you believe it? Are you ready? Yeah, I'm going home. This is great. I mean, I would be, it wouldn't be unusual to be a little distrustful.
Okay, so this is something I have no knowledge of. This is just off the top of my head. So, and it's probably been mentioned somewhere before. It's like, so if you've been out, if you were there, 20 or 30 years after the war ended, and then you were just discovered, you didn't know anything, and then you return home, does the government give you pay to the time you came home or to the time the war ended? Do you get anything?
You should go. I mean, that'd be a nice stack of cash. 30 years pay at one time.
Do you start off somewhat destitute? I think the Japanese people would give them something to start off with. I would just find that can be interesting. But can you say, oh, okay, well, we've never run into a situation like this. He thought he was still in the military.
I mean, even 5 years of back pay would get you.
Yeah, give them something.
Got a place to live,
Right. Give them something. So I saw something that came across the news, and I didn't look too deeply into it. So Vlad and Kim Jong Un have gotten together and agreed on some kind of pact. I guess that Kim Jong Un is officially supporting, I guess, or whatever you want to say. Putin's Russian position in Ukraine. I don't really know if that really means anything, or that this changes anything, except it's more out in the open than it was before. Or is there
the North Koreans are interested in selling bombs and bullets, and so we're trying to cut the Russians off from supplies, that kind of stuff. And there's the Ukrainians even have actually had some success, bombed some factories and so forth, and just attrition. The Russians have had to use a lot of military stuff, ammunition, weapons, what and whatnot to prosecute the war, right? So it does help marginally there, but it's more showing, solidarity on the other side. There are people behind him. It's mostly, we're going to deepen our involvement with each other. It's not good news for us. But I mean, things like that are going to happen because we have an historically weak president. I mean, it's interesting what's going on now. There's this gaslighting about what happened to Biden in Europe, right? When he wandered off, the parachuters came down, and all the leaders are looking at one thing, and he kind of wanders off, looking around, and Giorgiani Meloni, the prime minister of Italy, when he found him, gently led him back to where he needed to be, right? And and then he was at a fundraiser in Hollywood last week, and they're all waving, they're leaving the stage. It's him and Obama and maybe Jimmy Kimmel and somebody else, and he glitched. You watch the tape, there's like 6 seconds that he's like, and he doesn't move for 6 seconds. And Obama, who's my age, is like 9 weeks older than I am, noticed this and grabbed his hand and gently guided him off stage, right? So, I mean, the Democrats are like, oh, they've spliced this tape and it's misleading. It's not misleading. They know it. They have a huge problem now. It's been conjecture, and they try to show Trump mispronouncing a word. Okay, yeah, he says 10 million words a day. And yeah, he mispronounces a couple of them. He said the fourth time he said Ronnie Jackson's name, he said Ronnie Johnson. Oh no, he's just as bad. He's not just as bad. We're watching this on video, and everyone knows, right? Some people at 81 are completely vim and vigor and totally capable of being president, and some are not, right? And some are just they're over the hill at 81. So and that's what it looks like for Joe. And he had a lot of strikes against him before in this campaign, but this might be the last couple of weeks might be the death blow. You cannot. I think the problem the Democrats have is, after all this stuff, is you can't look 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road, and like what you see. What would the last year and a half of another Biden term look like, right? It's not being run by the guy we elected. It's being run by people who work for him, or people who have, elbowed their way into the situation after the election and whatnot, right? But the people, the idea of him administering the country, running the country in his current middle state is doesn't pass a smell test anymore.
Yeah, I mean, you go back to when he started as president. I mean, it is very clear. There's no editing that needs to be done. His voice is weaker, his gait is slower, and he winds up. I mean, he has gas, but there's a lot of those moments where he is kind of frozen, or he's got that blank stare, right?
Yeah. So you watch that tape of him at the fundraiser in Los Angeles. Right, there's 6 seconds of that tape, right, where he does not move when he's just right. And it's like there's soaking up the adulation, which there was a lot of adulation there, right? There were a lot of people applauding him and Obama and the whole star-studded cast of people he had out there. But he couldn't move, right? He was not in control of what he was and what he was doing. He wasn't waving. He wasn't looking around. He wasn't soaking it in. He was locked up, right? He was glitched. So, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I just, at this point in time, I don't think that, Karine Jean-Pierre's out there saying this is kind of a right wing, how they've been splicing these tapes together, creating this footage and all this stuff like that. I don't think our side has to do that.
No.
You can run the raw footage, the actual footage. It's there. There's nothing you have to splice together to create the image that he is, got a problem. He has a problem. I mean, I think there's just enough footage of him out there speaking at various events that says, this guy is not fit for office anymore.
That's right. That's right. They have a chance to get a big new customer who could be around a while, right?
Yeah.
Well into the future.
So this will be kind of interesting to see. I mean, I think 538 it's the first poll that they've done where they are saying that Trump is actually ahead. And that's not a favorable Trump pollster at all.
Well, 538 is an amalgam of polls, so he's he's gathering up everybody else's polls. His things are based on, he usually says, usually on there, based on 78 polls or something that he's read. But yes, they're moving Trump into positions on these polls and so forth that he's never been in before. He's more popular than he's ever been. He has it's up to right at 60% or 60% now chance that he'll win. It's up, in some moments even more than the betting markets and so forth. They're, it's climbing up. He's gotten 8 points on Biden in the last month or so, right? It's really careening. Now, what's the other thing about this is, and people need to recognize this, these things are possible, right? Obviously, this is not a binary stack of voters, right? It's like if Biden loses one, Trump gains one, right? That's not really the way this works, right? This election is really going to teach us this, because Trump is adding a lot of support. A lot of people who've never thought about being on the Trump bandwagon before are. One of Obama's chief fundraisers, she's not only thrown in with Trump and is now raising money for Trump, but she had all these Democrat artifacts from having worked for him. Like she had one of the original Hope posters, that had Obama's face on it, and she sold off all that to contribute to the Trump campaign, right? So, I mean, something's going on there, right? And it's not just her. It's about 2.5 times as many people are going from Biden to Trump as are going from Trump to Biden. It looks like Trump will probably carry Latino voters in this election. He will get somewhere between 15 and 25% of the black vote, which that's devastating for Biden. Biden has to almost lock that up, right? He has to be well into the mid-90s to win the election among the black vote, just because of where it's located and where, what states it plays into. He is behind. Trump is taking the lead in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, right? They're not big leads. All of them are small enough for Biden to, if he can come up with something that gives him momentum, they're small enough for him to retake the lead, right? And win the state. It's not 62 points. It's 1, 2, 3 points, depending on who's asking and what day, right? But, where is the impetus? What's going to happen that sends voters his way, right? It won't be the economy. It won't be foreign policy. He's on the wrong side of the main stuff there, and they're doing things like letting even more illegals in, and making all their spouses legal, and establishing a path to citizenship for people who snuck in the country illegally, right? These are things you're poking your finger in the eye of a lot of not necessarily, conservative voters. They weren't going to vote for you anyway, but there's a lot of people looking around and saying, this level of immigration is not healthy for the country, right? You're trying to load in voters for the next election, but we have welfare cases, we have crime in the street, and there's a big argument now, of course, about their crime stats, and the Democrats are like, wait a minute, crime, the FBI says it's way down, right? Because New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Baltimore, Memphis, New Orleans, St. Louis are not reporting crime stats. You take New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Boston, Baltimore, Minnesota, St. Louis, Boston, St. Louis, out of the crime stats, the crime stats look better, right? That's where a lot of the crime is. So, and the thing about it is too, is when they say these things now, their credibility is so shot that everybody goes, that's a lie. I mean, they don't even think about it. So that's a lie, right? There's like, how did they, it's not, did they manipulate the stat, but how did they manipulate the stat?
Yeah. The black vote. I mean, I saw something as I was kind of running through some things that CNN's Harry Enton was basically said that he was speechless about this loss, the erosion of support, the black vote from Biden. That Biden, has lost a pretty good chunk of that, and that's like you said. I mean, and that's a danger. I mean, Trump eating into the Latino vote and the black vote is a big problem for the Democrats, and the Democrats know it. But what are they going to do? They've got Kamala. They don't have anybody else. They're stuck with this guy, and so it's just it's going to.
Their move yesterday was to bring a tranny to the White House and put him at the podium. Seriously, right? Some guy in a dress with a beard. And there's a big production of Kamala answering the door, letting him in, and they all hug, and it's such a happy moment. And America's saying, man, we got some pretty serious problems, and the people in charge of solving them, this is how they're spending their days, right? I mean, whatever you think of trans, right? That is not the pressing need at this point. I'm just going to straight up say it. So you have this kind of things, right? They're stepping on their own messages right and left, and he can't get out of his own way. Everything he tries to do produces some of these moments that go viral.
Yeah, well,
Scott Jennings, he worked for Cruz, who he is. He's on CNN now. He says that he thinks 46 to 48 states may be in play. So this could be a Carter Mondale level wipeout, is what he's saying. I don't know about that. But
that would be something. I mean, if Trump gets something like that, we will never hear the end of it.
Right, that's right. And here's the thing about it. So you had another thing on your list was talking about Hung Cao.
Yeah.
And before anybody starts giggling, Hung Cao is the Republican candidate for U.S. Senate from Virginia. He's running against Tim Kaine, who was Hillary's running mate. The Virginia primary was last night, and he defeated, among other people, my friend Scotty Parkinson, who I worked with at Heritage. He was one of the candidates. He ran for Congress against Wexton. He barely lost in Virginia 10. He had a lot of support too, all up and down the district, from the top of Loudoun to Fauquier County or wherever it ends down there. Because we were out in that part of the world doing basketball stuff a lot, and it was really littered with his signs. He had tons of signs. Now, signs don't vote and blah, blah, blah. And he didn't win. It was close, but he didn't win. So he'll definitely be a major underdog against Tim Kaine. But if Trump is in play in 46 states, Hung Cao is in play, right? You're looking at the kind of wipeout where people say, yes, let's give him enough power in Congress to do what he wants, as opposed to the other people.
Right. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, if it really winds up being where Trump is going to run the table, then all those down ballot candidates that would have had a tougher time could sneak in there. I mean, there could be enough of a coattail effect there that these guys that are, even with strong Democrats, people who've been there for a while, that could flip a lot of things. That could change the whole, political map in a lot of ways. Republicans, to me, is always, the House races have been a little bit, uncertain in my mind, but a strong Trump changes that. It takes away the margins. I mean, look, we'll talk about Virginia right now, and we'll go back to some other things, but you've got Wexton leaving, and you have Spanberger leaving. So right, those are two open seats. Now, Wexton's area is much bluer, I guess, than Spanberger's area, right?
Well, I mean, yes and no, right? Loudon went left, but now has appeared to go back right some, right? And so a lot of that district is Loudon, and then south of Loudon into Prince William and so forth. It's purple. It's not really hardcore either way.
Yeah.
It was. Loudoun County went solidly blue for about 10 years. And now there's been a lot of recoil from that over, rapes in the bathrooms and
yeah.
like
And I mean, and as you mentioned, I mean, NoKo put up a pretty good fight the last time around, I guess, right?
Yeah.
So a good, strong candidate in an open seat would be very interesting there.
Right.
Spanberger wants to run for governor, I guess, so that's what her
Right.
thing is, right? So, so her seat's open. That could go and flip back our way.
That could flip back our way. So what happened in that primary, the Democrat will be Eugene Vindman, brother of the brother, who was forced out after lying about Trump in the Ukraine, the perfect phone call and so forth, as was his brother, and caught in a number of lies. But, that makes him only more adorable to the Democrats. He's going to run against a guy named Jeffrey Anderson, who appears to, we don't know yet for sure. There's still a few votes out, but it appears to on the verge of unseating Bob Good, who's that district is like Charlottesville and sort of stretches west a little bit toward Richmond, but that sort of like a circle through the middle of the state. And so it'll be, it'll be this Anderson against Vindman now. And it will be a really competitive race because the military hero has Trump's full backing. Trump backed him over Good because Good supported Ron DeSantis in the primaries. So, and the thing about it is like people are like, oh, he's punishing, even though Good came out as, oh, no, I've changed my mind. I'm back to Trump. I love Trump. The congressman from Virginia 5 is not, no one's demanding that he say who he endorses, right? If you decided you're going to go out on a limb like that, you've made a political choice, and it's a political choice with a lot of risk to it. It didn't pan out, so he's paying the price for it, right? So you have to think about, if he was such a perfect guy, why did he make a choice that, this sort of, risky and unsound?
Yeah, I mean, if you're interested in your political future, I mean, I think you all you have to do is look at what in general happens. Not 100% of the time, obviously, because that would be hard, if not impossible. But I think easily a majority of the time, those that speak out against Trump, wind up either leaving on their own volition, or they lose. They lose their primaries. So there is kind of a track record there of what happens when you do that. If Good thought that he could, his previous comments about Trump, that he could basically erase them and get on Trump's good side, and he was wrong. Now he still could win, but he is, he's trailing by what, about 100 or so votes. They had the last thing I saw,
up to 230 or so. The last I looked.
When I looked earlier this morning, I think there was 95% of the vote counted, and so this is going to be close, and this may take a little while to sort out. And everything because of that, because it's razor thin.
Also, there's about, I think, 70,000 votes in that primary, which is, considering what was on the ballot yesterday, that's an incredible turnout.
Yeah. Also, on Vindman, I saw something that he had like $5 million. I mean, they had to raise a lot of money. The other candidates couldn't raise anywhere close to that.
Right.
So he was going to be the anointed. If he had lost, that would have been another embarrassment for the Democrats, at least on that regard. Is like, kind of like David Trone, spend all this money, but then lose the race.
Yeah,
not good for you at all with that. So yeah, I mean, Virginia. I mean, that's kind of an interesting thing. I mean, so that shows there's still a few of those primaries that are out there that could have an impact on the elections here, the 2024. Who controls Congress? Who controls the Senate? Who knows? I mean, these are things that you have to think about going forward. In November. Going back here, I think if I'm correct, so I think the hostage rescue occurred after the last show we did, right?
I think so.
Yeah, I think so. That was that was a very daring rescue. The Israeli Defense Forces, I don't know, I've always held them just as in amazement in my, from a young age. You kind of remember the raid on Entebbe and everything like this. And, it's just, they really, they got in there and they lost, I guess, their commander or whatever, but they completely surprised the enemy. They did it in the middle of the day. They went into this complex and they got these people out. And this is why they have to keep pushing. This is why Israel has to keep pushing, because they can do things like this. Whereas, Hamas is like this, they're just talking, they're just flapping their tongue, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, we want to settle this, and we want into this. No, you don't. You want a complete takeover. You want the elimination of Jews in Israel. You have no interest in what real peace would be like. So Israel has to go and end you, and they also have to go get their people back. And the left, of course, their reaction is, oh, the civilians that were killed, and all this kind of stuff.
According to the Gaza Health Ministry.
Once again, right. The Gaza Health Ministry. That wonderfully reliable source of information. So
no reason to lie. No reason. None.
And what's your take on all that? Anything?
Well, there's a story in the Post this morning that Israel is saying that they are getting close to finishing the phase of wiping out Rafah. There were supposedly 5 battalions of Hamas soldiers, and 4 of them are liquidated, and they're working on they've gotten about 30% of the last one. And that's what they're doing, is going around and hoovering them up. But some of those guys, they've slipped off to northern Israel, and they're bombing from the north. Israel, is still being attacked. October 7th is still going on. There's still rockets landing in Israel, still terrorist attacks. There's still stuff happening to Israel. So, it's like, they should stop shooting because the other guys did. That's not true. The other guys continue to provoke. So, I think Israel's on the right track. I think that, Netanyahu accused the Biden administration of withholding some weapons. And the Bidens are adamant that they did not do this. And they are canceling meetings with him and so forth. And so, I'm not sure that the left hand always knows what the right is doing over there anymore. I think that they're, when there's a vacuum of power, right? When the person in the middle, the person who's supposed to have the power, is not really capable of exercising it, then everybody has the power, right? And then you have, people operating their own little governments as they see fit.
Yeah,
not what we voted for.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that rescue, that's a big. Isn't that a big plus for Netanyahu? I mean, shoring up his support in Israel and everything like this. I mean, we have Benny Gantz, who resigned from the war cabinet, and everything would make some.
Well, Benny's a dove, right? He doesn't want to fight anymore, right?
Right. He doesn't, and he wants to be prime minister, right? He wants to rule the country, so he has an agenda anyway. But you have this daring rescue, and it's just unmitigated success. So I think that's for Netanyahu, for Israel, for their plans and how their strategy about taking care of things. I think that helps reassure the Israeli people that they're on the right track.
Right.
Surely for the people who's the families where the hostages got to go home to, what a relief and what a great and joyous reunion they're having to do that. And then you find out a little bit more about what Hamas is doing and how they're treating people. And to me any hostage that's alive is still lucky to be alive, because we're over 8 months into this thing. And we already know a lot of people have been killed. A lot of the hostages have been killed in the meantime. So Hamas, they're brutal, and that doesn't seem. It doesn't matter what anybody says or does. You can't seem to get that through the heads of the far left, right? They just don't. It's the civilians, are the victims, and Israel is the aggressor, and they're the bad guys.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, that's right. Somebody besides Biden is making that call, because Biden wants, he's trying to, walk both sides of this line and be completely satisfactory to the Israelis and to Hamas. He wants them both to like him. I don't think you can pull that off.
Yeah. And we can talk more about this next week because we'll be a day before this. But the thought just occurred to me right now too, and with this comment from John, what kind of shape is Joe going to be in? What's the preparation, between now and roughly 8 days from now for the debate? I mean,
supposedly Joe it's either today or tomorrow is going into hiding to prepare and will not be seen in public until the debate. Right. And there's like 6 days to and I'm not sure that, I don't know what they do, right? Because you're not allowed to have cards or notes. So he's going to have to remember what to say. Right. And and he can't really control the questions. Right. And they'll probably be pretty favorable to him, but he really can't control it. And Trump gets a say, up to whatever the time limit is. Right. Then they turn off your mic or whatever. By the way, so he has agreed to these rules. I think the turn off the mic rule helps Trump because I think it hurt him in the 2020 debates when he kept fact checking Biden in real time, right? Biden would say something that was ridiculous and Trump would right then say, "That's ridiculous, Joe," and start explaining why it was wrong. And it's Joe's time and the moderator then, "Oh, yeah, it's his time. You got to shut up, man." So America looks at that and they, you get to a point where you're not considering the points Trump is trying to make. You're saying he's a loud, boorish guy who interrupts people, right? So, I think he turned off a lot of people with that. So I think that, not letting Trump interrupt actually helps Trump. But 2 things they should have done that they didn't do. One is publish the questions in advance, right? Here's what we're going to ask, and ask them the same question. Right. It's not this gotcha. You said back in then, and now you say this. And how do you reckon that? It's like that has nothing to do with how you're going to run the country for the next 4 years. That's how you field questions from reporters trying to make a name for themselves. Right. With sticky questions. OK, I don't want Joe stuck on a sticky question either. I want Joe to get to explain what he would do for the next 4 years. That's the information I'm watching to get. Right. If he has some stuff that would work, let's get that out and talk about it and talk about why Trump is not for that and so forth, right? But if he doesn't, then we need to know that too. But they're going to try to make things important to Trump, more important than this that others may not consider important. That's the whole way politics work. My agenda is the one that helps you, not his, right? So I think that they should have said, publish the questions and the reporter asked the question. And then the reporters' mics are off. They cannot speak until they're asking the next question, right? I do not want to hear their follow-ups. I don't want their real-time fact checks. That's not their role. Ask the questions, shut your mouth.
Yeah, that would be interesting because it would give both sides a chance. They would have a different kind of preparation. They would know exactly what's coming.
Right.
America would know what's coming. And then they could also make a decision as to whether or not to tune in or not. Though the media probably to a certain extent they like, if they would love to catch Trump, making some kind of egregious mistake. They're not interested in Biden tripping over himself. So that's a high risk for them. But, if you put the questions out there and give them time to prepare, then I think in a sense you can say, which guy is really ready to lead the country? Because you've given them days to prepare this message. Now,
and even more than that, take all the personality out of it. How are we going to handle prescription drug sales? All right, just an example, just some rando issue that's out there. Okay, we get, instead of hearing, the other guy lied and all this stuff, it's, this is what I would do. And then the other one says, that's ridiculous. Here's what I do. It's a far better idea. Right. So that's the kind of thing I want is what is going to happen on the issues that we care about, not what you said before or who's mad at you or, what Judge Marchand said and why can't you just, follow a gag order and all this garbage. It's just who's going to, how will the things that matter be handled under your administration as opposed to the other? And I think it's a fair question for both, since the Democrats are raising it. Democrats have, the Democrats have spent a lot of time trying to say, Trump is just as addled as Biden, right? They show these tapes and you'll see Trump, you're like, that doesn't say addled to me, right? So, ask that question, right? Okay, how can you guarantee, tell us, what should we believe that you will be sharp in 4 years, right? Well, you'll still be able to do this in 4 years, given there have been gaps and the other side thinks you're already nuts, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, right.
Both candidates, it's a question, ask the question.
Yeah. I mean, you're part of this too, I think, is just that it's not like, it's not like, well, let me think about that question for a minute. I'll think about, the question, what the policy are. Stick to the policies. Talk about immigration. Talk about the economy. Things like that. All hit all the hot button issues. Those are the things you should focus on. And what is Joe Biden going to do about this in the next 4 years? What is Donald Trump going to do about this next 4 years? That's it. That's all I want to know how they do. So you can see the difference. You can say apples and oranges, this guy, either on the same page or they're not. And here's what the differences are. Get all the accusations out of the way, all that other nonsense that creeps into these things, and say, let's talk about policy. Let's talk about what you will do as the president of the United States on a policy basis, and I think it'll show, as I said before, I think it'll show which guy is really prepared and ready and capable of leading, because I just have this doubt that Joe Biden can take all of those facts. If you had 5 things that you were going to talk about during the debate or whatever the topics were, and then he had to kind of learn them and kind of understand what the talking points are for the administration to say, this is what we're going to do, this is how so that he can convince voters of what he needs to do. And I just have a hard time believing that he can basically have all that information floating around in his head, because you alluded to it, there's no note cards. He's got to be able to spit that out. Donald Trump may not be perfect in that regard, but Trump will hit the mark more so than Joe Biden will.
Right. Trump does not have to have the issues explained to him. He does understand, right? He's on board. And I don't mean, Biden, there was obviously a time when Biden was capable of understanding all these issues in detail. I'm not saying there wasn't, but at this point, he is clearly handled, right? They clearly, like throughout his administration, question number 4, Lori Jones, AP, and he has the question, right? And he has the prepared answer. It's all set up in advance. So, you don't have that now. He's going to have to stand alone and do his thing. And, I don't know if you saw this. There was, Trump gave a speech yesterday in Racine, Wisconsin. And the people, the Trump campaign was tweeting out the speech as it went along, right? Live tweeting it. And, there's a bunch of policy proposals in there. Like Trump wants an Iron Dome for the whole country. We're back to missile defense, right? What he wants to do with tariffs and taxes and so forth. So, where's the debate on that? He has suggested, or some say he is talking about, and he hasn't said this publicly, but there's people who are saying that privately he's talking about using tariffs to raise all the money for the federal government. I think we did that about the first more than half the history of the country, right? That's how we raised all our money. That's right. That's exactly right. Let's talk about that idea. Would that work? Would that be better than what we have now? Should we have an income tax system where 47% of the people pay no income tax? Is that fair? Should we keep doing that? Right? We don't ever get to have that conversation because, we want to talk about, Stormy Daniels, and we want to talk about, Joe wandering off stage and his son's drugs and all this kind of stuff. But let's have the conversation. Let's strip the bad off of both and make them talk about the stuff that matters to us.
Yeah, I mean, didn't he say? It's not something that's really under his direct control, but about tipped wages, right? No taxes on the tipped wages. Now, that's great for the Las Vegas audience, the people out there, because there's a lot of tipping that goes on in Vegas, and there's a lot of tipping that goes on in any big.
There's also the reporting requirement for that is really complex, puts a lot of work on the restaurants.
Right. And there's no doubt that something ought to be done with this whole thing. It worked okay, I guess, for a long time the way it was done. You have your tip wage, and then you have your regular wage and all this stuff. And now we're gotten to the point where people don't even understand what a tipped wage is versus it's like, why is the cook making $20 an hour, but the guy up front's making $3.25? It's like, well, the guy up front gets to take the tips.
Yeah.
And the restaurant is required to hit minimum wage, and make if there should be any shortfall and everything like that. But you do become, I mean, I don't mind the tipping culture in general, but I understand there is a heavy burden on the restaurant of trying to track all this stuff. I mean, cash tips, I mean, they still do exist and everything like that. It's just
right. The tracking was a bear.
I mean, it's I think with Trump, it's kind of like, he keeps doing this, and he did this as president. I mean, he threw a lot of things out on the table about the taxation, the way that we run the tax system in America, and it needs to be fixed. It needs to be reformed. It's a mess.
Right, he's right about that.
So
this particular proposal, but see, that's a good example though. Like you can say, like Matt Walsh of all people, who's normally a Trump ally, right, was out this morning. And he's like, well, okay, so why do tipped people get a break? Why does their income not affect it?
Yeah.
And what kind of sense does that make? So let's push back from the right on it. It's an interesting idea. I don't think many people have given it a whole lot of thought. Like, what would it mean fiscally to the country and so forth? But let's have that debate. Let's talk about it. Instead of crackpots launching their deal, let's have a real conversation. Maybe that is a good idea. Maybe it's not.
Yeah.
I mean, Trump floats a lot of ideas. He says it to see what people say, which I think is a good thing. Because, you find out, if your job is to run the country like the people who put you in office want it run, then, floating a trial balloon and having them be able to come along and say, heck no, is a good thing, right? That's part of it, part of the process.
Well, I mean, that's where, to me, in some senses, he and Elon Musk are somewhat alike, because
they have ideas. They think of new things.
They throw out these ideas. That's how you get something. I mean, go ahead and throw 10 things against the wall and see if what sticks, and you just keep doing it. And Elon does that. I mean, he challenges convention. Donald Trump challenges convention. Right. Now, people think he's crazy because of that, and people think Elon Musk is crazy because of the things he does. And yet, look at the success both of these men have had in their lifetimes. Is that it's because of that whole thing, that whole thought process. Let's throw this on the table and see what happens, and see. Let's have a discussion. Maybe it doesn't work. Maybe it does work. Who knows? Elon has shown a lot of brilliance because of all the ideas that have people. People scratch their heads, but a lot of the stuff comes to fruition, and you're like, we never could have done that if Elon hadn't just thrown that out there.
Right. Remember when they said, Twitter will collapse under Elon? I mean, it's doing better than it ever was before, and with 1/4 of the workforce.
Yeah, I mean, Elon's he's kept that together, and he's made that a better place, I think, overall.
And much better for free speech.
Yeah, you get a lot of people who are, a lot of the lefties said they're giving that up, and that's okay. Okay, sorry, fine, okay, because you don't like the fact that it's a more open forum and it is better for free speech than it was before, and that there are no.
You can't defend your arguments.
Yeah, they're not censoring them like they used to and everything like that. So, I don't know. So Biden did this executive action about the spouses of immigrants. They can actually get visa. They can stay. They can go to work. They're not going to get deported. Is this more pandering by the Biden administration?
Yeah, that's another one. It's like, okay, what's the rationale for that? You're encouraging criminal activity, right? You're incentivizing criminal activity. Why are you doing that? And who, profile for me the voter who saw that measure and said, you know, I've been thinking between Trump and Biden, Trump and Biden, Trump and Biden. Now I see that one, I'm going Biden, right? Who is that person? Where is that person? I just don't see at this point, you know, even people on the far left are saying that unfettered immigration has been bad for the country.
Yeah, I don't see where this is a tipping point election issue. I mean, at this point in time, you know, you need to find things that will get people to vote for you and give them reasons to vote for you. It's like, how does this really move the needle in your favor, except bring more criticism about your immigration policy?
Right. That's right.
So
who's thinking of this? They seem to be trying to, you know, let's go get that radical left vote and let's make sure we nail that down. Right, not just your garden variety leftist, but the far left, the squad and people to the left of the squad. And it's like, I just don't think there's a big cache of votes there. You know, I don't think you change the trajectory of any of this with those people.
All right, so now I'm going to switch to this one thing because I had a little give and take, I guess, or with the climate defiance people. The congressional baseball game took place. The eight of those clowns ran out on the field, tried to disrupt the game. They got arrested. One of the suggestions I made to them was that they should have been tased. I was not very kind to them. And I don't know if you saw. So I got this tweet. I got this reply back from them. Why are you condemning us for stopping members of Congress from playing a baseball game and not condemning members of Congress for playing a baseball game that is sponsored by Chevron during the 12th hottest month on record? Why? You know, it's like, I just feel so bad.
Yeah.
I mean,
you really got me with that.
I don't know if you saw the tweets that the climate defiance people were putting out after those people, guys were arrested, but it was crazy. It's like, you know, they were trying to make them heroes. It's like, no, you guys are a bunch of clods.
Yeah, you're clowns who get off on interrupting stuff, and you know, you have a cause, but you know, your cause is getting on TV doing ridiculous stuff. And
that game is for charity. You know, this is not even this is not a political event. That game is put on every year for charity.
Yeah.
So this is where you have to say, Congress, this is, you know, they try to put aside all their political differences, go out and have some fun, raise money for charity, and then go on with their business afterwards. So,
right. And I also think that we're getting to the point where Americans are making the delineation between protesting and screwing with people's lives. The people who sit in the middle of the road, these guys who are attacking. I guess someone attacked Stonehenge this morning. There's some, you know, activist or whatever. It's like, you know, some of those people, it's not going to stop until some of those people go away for some substantial prison terms. If you put some of those people in jail for 25 or 30 years, then the rest of them will say, oh, I don't want to end up like that. Yeah, there you go. Well done.
I'm glad I got some love. Anyway, all right. So we've got, I'll give you about a minute or so to close it out.
Let's see. Macron dissolves parliament. Yeah, that's another thing that's happening. Europe is about to look a lot different. All these conservative parties won all over the EU. We could get into that one. The minimum wage is working about exactly as I always put in there when people start talking about the minimum wage, what it should be. I'm like, hey, let's make it $100 an hour. Cure poverty once and for all. Just sweep it all out the door. You know, well, we can't do that. Well, why not? Because the same arguments that say don't do it at $10 or $12 an hour say don't do it at 100, right? The argument really doesn't change. It just works by degree. I'm not surprised to see that Target backing off the Pride. The people who went hard Pride are retrenching from it. It doesn't look like it's a successful thing. And we'll close by saying, you know, Willie Mays, I'm a big baseball fan, as you know, and as I know you are too. And, you know, I know that we remember that, you know, Willie Mays is one of the best 3 or 4 people who ever put on a pair of spikes.
Yeah. One of the all-time greats. All right. Well, great way to close it out. Everyone, please, as always, stay safe and stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world, and do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And as always, God bless America, and we will see you again next week.